Pierce Brosnan's story begins in the small town of Drogheda, Ireland, where he was born on May 16th, 1953. His early life was marked by the absence of both parents. His father, Thomas Brosnan, left before Pierce was old enough to form any memories of him, and his mother, May Smith, had to leave to build a career in London. She left young Pierce in the care of his maternal grandparents, Philip and Kathleen Smith, when he was barely a year old. Although his grandparents were kind and loving, Pierce's world felt fractured. At such a young age, he was left to grapple with the haunting absence of his mother. This early abandonment planted a seed of loneliness and a feeling of being unwanted that would accompany him for much of his life. For Pierce, the question of why didn't she stay lingered in the silence. A child without roots. As Pierce grew, the pattern of being passed from one caregiver to another continued. After his grandparents passed away, he was moved in with various relatives and friends. Though he wasn't abused or neglected in any violent way, he never felt truly settled. He was always someone else's responsibility, a child who had no permanent place to call home. School offered no sanctuary either. At St. Kieran's CBS, Pierce was the boy without a father or mother at home, a boy without the security of knowing that someone was waiting for him when the school bell rang. He remained quiet and observant, learning to read the room for signs of where hurt might come from next. Art became his escape, not out of passion at first, but as a means of survival, offering him a temporary refuge from a world that made him feel invisible. The return of his mother. At 10 years old, Pierce's mother, May, reappeared in his life. She had built a career as a nurse in London and remarried. She sent for him to live with her, and so Pierce moved to London, a city that, though they shared a language, felt entirely foreign to him. It was a difficult adjustment for him. The woman he was supposed to call mother felt more like a stranger. The emotional distance between them created a barrier, and Pierce described these years as a time when he always felt like an outsider. Despite this, London was a city brimming with possibilities, something Pierce had never experienced before. He was still looking for a place where he belonged, but in the vastness of London, he found himself again an outsider. He was caught between two worlds, never fully at home in either. Finding a voice through fire eating. As a teenager, Pierce discovered something unexpected that would begin to change the trajectory of his life, a job as a fire eater with a small traveling circus. It wasn't glamorous, nor was it artistic in the way he would later come to understand. But for Pierce, it was transformative. For the first time, he commanded attention. In the streets of London, where he performed tricks for strangers who tossed coins at him, he became visible. It was an adrenaline rush, and it gave him something he had never known before, the feeling of being seen. This experience planted a seed of ambition. If the world could stop and look at him, maybe he had a future worth fighting for. It was a far cry from the quiet, overlooked boy of his past, and it became a critical turning point in his journey. The drama center and a new beginning. At 18, Pierce Brosnan made another bold move. He enrolled at the prestigious Drama Centre London. This was no easy feat. The school was highly selective, and Pierce had no formal training or connections. But there was something in him that the faculty saw, an unquantifiable quality that they recognized could make a great actor. His raw potential, paired with the intense method acting approach taught at the Drama Center, was exactly what he needed. The school's philosophy wasn't about learning lines and rehearsing blocking. It was about digging deep into one's own history and personal experiences. For Pierce, this meant confronting the emotional scars of his past, particularly his mother's absence and the neglect he had felt growing up. His painful history became his most valuable tool, and he soon began to find his voice on stage. The Bond moment, an opportunity lost. It was his role in Remington Steele that made Pierce Brosnan a star. He embodied the suave, confident, and mysterious qualities of the character so well that it wasn't long before Hollywood started to take notice. The producers of James Bond were also watching, and Pierce was considered a front-runner to take on the iconic role of 007. But fate had other plans. In 1986, while Pierce was in the midst of negotiating his Bond contract, tragedy struck. Cassandra Harris, his wife, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Pierce chose to put his family first, stepping back from everything to care for her. He turned down the Bond opportunity, a decision that would come to haunt him. The role he had worked his entire career toward slipped away, but it was a decision grounded in love and loyalty. The tragic loss of Cassandra. Cassandra's diagnosis changed everything for Pierce. Instead of focusing on his rising career, he became her full-time caregiver. He accompanied her to chemotherapy, sat with her during the long, silent hours that cancer patients endure, and did everything he could to support her. Pierce was present in every sense of the word, and his dedication to her was unwavering. In 1987, they welcomed their son, Sean, into the world. It was a moment of joy amidst the shadow of illness. But Cassandra's battle with cancer was a long and painful one. In 1991, after 4 years of fighting, Cassandra passed away. Pierce was left devastated, having lost the woman who gave him a sense of home. He would later reflect on how her illness reshaped his perspective on life and fame. You learn very quickly what matters and what doesn't. The return of Bond. A dream. Realized after Cassandra's death, Pierce was emotionally shattered. He threw himself into his work but carried the weight of loss everywhere he went. It wasn't until 1994 that Pierce would finally get the call he had waited for years to receive. The producers of James Bond wanted him to take over the role of 007. This time he didn't hesitate. Playing Bond was no longer about proving himself. It was about honoring the woman who had given him everything he needed: a home, a family, a sense of belonging. Pierce's portrayal of Bond became iconic, but it was layered with something deeper than what audiences saw on screen. The calm, the stillness, the smile, these were all products of a man who had lost everything and survived. The legacy of Bond and beyond. Pierce Brosnan's time as James Bond, spanning from GoldenEye, 1995, to Die Another Day, 2002, solidified his place in Hollywood. His portrayal of Bond resonated with audiences who admired the character's charm, wit, and vulnerability. But for Pierce, Bond was never just a character. It was a reflection of his own struggles and resilience. The role gave him the recognition he had longed for, but never at the cost of the person he had become. He carried with him the scars of his past, the quiet strength forged through years of loss and longing. Pierce's journey from a lonely, abandoned boy to one of the world's most famous actors is a testament to the power of resilience, love, and the search for belonging.